Hey there, I'm Kevin, she's Wendy. Welcome to the video. Boasting ancient civilizations and some of the most iconic scenery in the world, from towering mountain peaks to the actual lowest point on Earth, lush agriculture, a stunningly beautiful desert, and even a sliver of coastline, populated by some of the friendliest, most welcoming people you could ever hope to meet. Jordan is a traveler's dream. Whether this is the first you've heard of it, or you've been wanting to go for years, the following series is designed to give you a taste of the country by taking you along for the ride. Learning about the people, politics, culture, and history of a place can make a huge difference in your final experience. We've seen cases where people have shared negative reviews on places or people when their unpleasant experiences were self-inflicted by their own ignorance of cultural norms and traditions. In the case of a country with as long and convoluted a history as Jordan, it's a good idea to wrap your brain around some of it ahead of time. Hence this video. For an in-depth, rapid-fire examination of Jordan's statistics and demographics, check out Paul Barbato's video over on his YouTube channel, Geography Now. He's an excellent resource for learning a lot about a country in a short amount of time. Kind of like video Cliff's Notes. I'll put a link to his video in the description below. Make sure to leave a comment letting him know we sent you. He has no idea who we are, but do it anyway. I am fascinated by history, whether it's climbing the steps of a 2,000-year-old Roman amphitheater 1,500 miles from Rome, visiting a 17th century sugar plantation in the Caribbean, or getting up close and personal with a World War II era Spitfire in New Zealand. There's just something visceral about connecting to our past. In a 1948 speech to the House of Commons, Winston Churchill paraphrased George Santayana's quote from 1905 when he said, "Those who fail to learn from history are condemned to repeat it." I agree with that, but it's also just fun to learn. I've heard it said that you would need 6 months in Jordan to see it all, and that sounds about right. We were there for 16 days and barely scratched the surface. So let's spin the globe and get some particulars out of the way. A country with many nicknames, my favorite is the Oasis of Stability. The Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan sits within the Levant region at the crossroads of Asia, Africa, and Europe, bordered by Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Syria, the West Bank, and Israel. The only thing keeping Jordan from being landlocked is a scant 16 miles of coastline in the southwest at the Gulf of Aqaba on the Red Sea. Sunni Islam is the official religion, making up 92% of the population. Around 6% are Christians, mostly Greek Orthodox, and the remaining 2% are mostly Shia Muslims and Druze. Ethnically, around 98% of the population is Arab, with around 1% being Armenian and 1% Circassian. Those numbers belie Jordan's relatively liberal stance compared to neighbors in the region. For example, they are a constitutional monarchy. The 65-member Senate is appointed by the king, while the 130 members of the House of Representatives are elected and serve a 4-year term. There are also minimum quotas to protect against an all-male, all-Muslim house. 15 seats are set aside for women, though they usually win more than that. 9 for Christians, and 3 for Chechens and Circassians. I've also read that during Ramadan, many Christians cook for their Muslim neighbors, which is apparently something that only happens in Jordan. Women can wear non-traditional clothing without harassment anywhere in Jordan. In fact, Western fashions are very popular. Women also are not required to wear the hijab, although most of them do. Queen Rania, who was born in Kuwait to Palestinian parents and fled to Jordan in 1991 following the Gulf War, has never worn the veil. She also has a bachelor's degree in business from American University in Cairo and worked for Citibank and Apple prior to meeting then Prince Abdullah in 1993. Fun fact, she was born 10 days after me. This photo was taken last year, the week we both turned 52. I'll thank you to withhold comment on which of us is aged better. Foreign women will often attract the attention of Jordanian men. For the most part, they're just curious about you, and probably clueless that their unabashed staring could be seen as impolite. Jordan is a very safe country, Middle Eastern or otherwise, for female travelers. Having said that, it is still advisable to be aware of your surroundings and behave in a culturally appropriate manner. Be careful when making direct eye contact with or being overly cheerful toward Jordanian men. They may mistake that for interest. At the same time, don't be afraid to make a scene and don't feel a need to be polite if a Jordanian man makes unwanted advances towards you. Unacceptable behavior is unacceptable behavior. Common sense dictates that modest clothing should still be worn at religious sites and some historical locations. Jordanians will respect you and your culture if you respect theirs. In particular, respect for Islam and the king. The Jordanian royal family is very popular and enjoys strong support. It's also worth noting it is illegal to publicly criticize, shame, or insult the king. You don't have to carry on about how great he is. Just be polite. Keep local culture in mind. As a Muslim nation, behaviors that we in the West may consider tame, like public displays of affection, may not be taken so lightly. Alcohol is legal, although not always easy to find in Jordan. In East Amman, for example, the only places we found that sold alcohol were restaurants. In Petra and Aqaba, there were liquor stores. Be aware, though, if you visit during the month of Ramadan, you should refrain from drinking, smoking, and eating in public during daylight hours, as Muslims fast from sunrise until sunset the entire month. Be careful discussing the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, too. Millions of Palestinians have taken refuge in Jordan since the first Arab-Israeli war, and it can be a highly charged subject. As a rule, we don't express any political leanings or opinions to the folks we meet when traveling, unless we have an opportunity to get to know them. This doesn't mean we don't listen, au contraire. That's one of our favorite parts of chatting with single-serving friends. There are also still huge refugee camps of Syrians who fled the civil war, and a large Iraqi population remains ever since the Gulf War. I imagine there's probably even more Syrians now as a result of the recent earthquakes in Syria and Turkey. This is part of Jordan's reputation as the oasis of stability in the region. Although they have very little in the way of natural resources, including water, they're willing to help out a neighbor in need. The recommendation, if discussing religion, is to avoid doing so from an agnostic or atheistic point of view. Even educated Jordanians may be puzzled by the suggestion that you might not believe in God. As with politics, we try to avoid the topic of religion altogether, other than in an honest effort to learn more about it. Trying to evangelize or otherwise convert Muslims to other religions is an absolute no-no in Jordan. Adultery, including consensual sex between unmarried couples, is illegal and can be punished by 3 years in jail. This isn't really enforced among tourists, but it won't be an issue for you anyway, because we already talked about the displaying of the public affections, did we not? Regarding LGBTQ rights, homosexuality is not illegal in Jordan, unlike many other Arab countries. However, just because it's not a crime doesn't mean your typical Jordanian is an ally. In a 2019 poll, 93% of Jordanians answered no when asked, is homosexuality an acceptable practice? Having said that, there are a few cafes in Amman that are considered gay-friendly. However, there are no anti-discrimination laws specifically protecting the LGBTQ community, and same-sex relationships are not officially recognized. Gender reassignment is legal, but only with a judge's approval, which is very rare. Recent reports suggest that a new wave of younger LGBTQ people are coming out and becoming more visible in the country, establishing a vibrant community of filmmakers, journalists, writers, artists, and other young professionals. Jordan is a highly educated country. with a literacy rate of over 98% for both men and women. In recent years, women have begun earning a higher number of advanced degrees than men. However, they're still underrepresented in the workforce. One area that we noticed both of these statistics during our visit was that every retail store we saw was run and staffed by men, except for the 3 pharmacies we visited, which were all run by female pharmacists. You'll often hear that most Jordanians understand English. In our experience, that's an exaggeration. It is true that almost everyone seems to know the English phrase, "Welcome to Jordan." We heard it so often on the streets of East Amman, it was almost comical. The only non-Arabic language used for signage is English. There are also tourist police near the major monuments who can help with directions and other information. It never hurts to know a few useful phrases, though. Wherever we go, we try to arrive armed with the basics of hello, goodbye, and thank you. It's a small, easy gesture that is always appreciated by locals, even when they realize it's all you know of their language. I had always heard that the proper Arabic greeting is Assalamu alaikum, which means peace be upon you, to which the proper response is Wa alaikum salam, or and unto you peace. This always intimidated me because I knew I would screw up which one I was supposed to say, or I would put the words in the wrong order. Wendy actually played a terrible prank on me in Indonesia, playing on a similar worry of mine I had there. It's one of her proudest moments. She can be an evil, evil woman. I think we were both relieved when we learned the informal greeting, salam, which is just like saying hi. Unlike some countries, there doesn't seem to be any offense committed when using this casual, familiar greeting with strangers. At least not as a tourist who's obviously just trying to be friendly. By far the most often used word for us was shukran, meaning thank you. We also found ourselves saying yalla or yalla yalla a lot, which is like, come on, let's go. But I was talking about the king, wasn't I? His name is Abdullah II bin al-Hussein. Born in 1962, the first child of King Hussein and his second wife Muna, who was from England. Here's a photo of her with Abdullah on the right and his little brother Faisal. Rumor has it that she met the king while working as a secretarial assistant on the film set of Lawrence of Arabia. The Hashemites, or House of Hashim, are the oldest ruling dynasty in the Muslim world. They have ruled the city of Mecca continuously since the 10th century and were given the thrones of the Hijaz, Syria, Iraq, and Jordan following their World War I alliance with the British. Abdullah is a 41st generation direct descendant of the Prophet Muhammad. His ascension to the throne is a bit of an anomaly, somewhat similar to Elizabeth II's in England. If you're unaware, she became queen because her uncle decided to marry an American divorcee, thereby abdicating the throne to his brother. Liz had no intention or desire to be queen, yet she ended up wearing the crown for over 70 years. At birth, Abdullah was the heir apparent, but his father transferred that title to Abdullah's uncle Hassan in 1965 because of political turmoil in the region. Hussein's grandfather, Abdullah I, was executed in 1951, though he was covering the bases in case something happened to him. Abdullah II attended St. Edmund's School in England and went to high school in Massachusetts, here in the US. He planned a career in the military, training at Royal Military Academy Sandhurst in the UK and studying Middle Eastern affairs at Oxford. He also trained at Fort Knox, Kentucky and the American Naval Postgraduate School. He worked his way up, eventually commanding Jordan's Special Forces at the rank of Major General. Fans of the Grand Tour may remember in Season 1, the lads got to play war games on a Special Forces training ground with the British SAS. Yeah, that was in Jordan. Abdullah's father was diagnosed with cancer in 1992 and often traveled to the US for treatment, leaving Hassan to run things while he was away. Upon his return from a 6-month absence in 1998, Hussein criticized his brother for abusing his constitutional powers. 2 weeks before he died, in January of 1999, Hussein renamed Abdullah as heir apparent. Jordan and the U.S. first established diplomatic relations in 1949, 3 years after Jordanian independence, and Jordan was designated a major non-NATO ally by the United States in 1996. 2000 brought the U.S.-Jordan Free Trade Agreement, the first U.S. FTA with an Arab country, which is still in place today. Jordan and the United States belong to many of the same international organizations, including the United Nations, International Monetary Fund, World Bank, and the World Trade Organization. Jordan is also a partner for cooperation with the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, has an enhanced partnership with NATO, and is a key partner in the global coalition to defeat ISIS. In 2021, when the Pandora Papers were leaked, it was learned that the Jordanian royal family are super rich. Yeah. They keep a lot of money in Swiss bank accounts and own land all over the world. Somehow there are people who use the word controversy to describe this revelation.
I've mentioned that he's the king, right? Yeah, the British royal family are worth like $28 billion, and that's just what they're willing to admit to publicly. Monarchs are rich, folks.
It's good to be the king.
Over history, the area that is now Jordan has been home to many civilizations, at least as far back as the Neolithic Age. The region was also part of the Persian Empire as well as the Roman Empire. The Nabateans settled Petra around 200 BCE, and petroglyphs in the desert illustrate a timeline of nomadic cultures going back to at least 800 BCE. Bedouins, most easily described as the indigenous people of Jordan, offer their own colorful, welcoming element to society. It is said that all ethnic Jordanians have Bedouin roots. All of this and more will be touched on in the coming series. Before World War I, the entire Levant was part of the Ottoman Empire. In 1916, during World War I, the Great Arab Revolt was launched against the Ottomans with help from the British and this guy, Thomas Edward Lawrence, better known to most as Lawrence of Arabia. They regained control over most of the Hejaz and the Levant. However, thanks to the Sykes-Picot Agreement in 1916, they failed to gain international recognition as an independent state. Then, in 1917, UK Foreign Secretary Arthur Balfour made a public statement announcing Britain's support for the establishment of a, quote, national home for the Jewish people, unquote, in Palestine. Jews at the time made up less than 10% of the population. The details of these events and everything that has unfolded since are intricate and far beyond the scope of this video. I only mention them here because they remain significant to the people who live there. We believe that having at least a rudimentary understanding is important for anyone planning to visit. The number of historically important sites in Jordan is enough reason to visit all on its own. From the Roman amphitheater and citadel in Amman, to Jerash, the Dead Sea, Petra, Wadi Rum, and Aqaba, we'll give you a taste of sites from the full length of the country.
Bible sites, such as Bethany beyond the Jordan, where Christians believe Jesus was baptized. Mount Nebo, where Deuteronomy says Moses saw the promised land prior to his death. And Lot's Cave, where some believe Lot and his daughters took refuge after the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. There are many, many more, some of which we'll discuss more in coming videos.
There's honestly much more I could say about Jordan, but I think I've gone on long enough for now. Hopefully this video has served its purpose, to pique your interest enough to check out the full series. Subscribe now, and click that bell to receive notifications when we post new content. The next video will be a short one about taking a drone to Jordan. As soon as that one is posted, the series will begin for real, with our visit to the capital of Amman. Thanks as always for watching. See you in the next one.